For this project, we will be building this toaster over here. So we will be using spline modeling. Okay, so here is a sample output of our product. We will be also putting in studio lights and studio environment so that we are able to render something like a product visualization output. Okay, so let's get started. So before we start, I'm just going to show you all of the options here for our spline modeling. So usually we create a spline. We can create one from here, or we can also import AI files or Adobe Illustrator files into Cinema 4D. Then afterwards, for example, let's have this arc, and then let's duplicate this. So I'm going to hold down Controller Command, and then here we have all of our spline modeling options. Okay, so let me just bring this out. So number one, we have extrude. So extrude basically is taking the shape of the spline and then putting thickness to it. So if we click on extrude and then parent our text to that generator, we have our object over here. So next is we have lathe. Basically, you just need a shape of a spline, and then once you parent it underneath the lathe generator, it sort of like generates like a circular shape from that spline. Okay, and then next is we have the loft. So the loft basically is looking for several splines like this one, wherein you can actually direct what the surface would shape like. So we'll just parent all of these splines under our loft. As you can see, the order of our arcs is very important. So you can see here, if we turn this off, this is the cage of our surface model. We have our splines lined up. And then if we turn this on, we have a whole surface for our lathe generator. So this is perfect if you want to model cars or maybe metallic objects. Okay, next, we have the sweep generator. Basically, you would need a path and a rail. So for example, let's just create a circle, and then I'm going to create a path. So I'm going to go to my top view, and then I'm going to use the spline pen tool, and I'm just going to click and drag like so, and then press enter and escape. So this is our path, and then this is our sweep. So let's just create a sweep generator, and then let's parent these two over here. So again, I think we have it in reverse. So let's place the circle before the spline. So now we sort of have like an extruded shape. So the shape is driven by our circle. So if we make this smaller, our mesh becomes smaller. Okay. So next is we have the spline mask. Basically, it's booleans for our mask objects. So if we have, for example, a circle and then another spline over here, for example, like a rectangle, if we add a spline mask and then parent them together here, as you can see, these splines are now connected together because we set the spline mask to union. But if we set it to subtract, it will behave the same as booleans. Okay. Last but not the least is vectorizer. Basically, if you click this one, you have an import button over here. So if you import an image, for example, an Apple logo, it should be black and white. Once you click open, and then let's just click no. Now we have our Apple logo over here. You can adjust the tolerance. And then later on, once this is fine-tuned, you can add your extrude effect or extrude generator, and then also use them as a spline. Okay. So now let's get started in modeling our toaster. So let's just take a look at our reference. So here I can see that I can use a rectangle spline and then extrude it. Okay. So I'm going to go to the spline create tool, and then I'm just going to add a rectangle. Okay. So this rectangle is gonna be my toaster. And then I'm just gonna adjust the width of our rectangle like so. And then I'm gonna round the edges by clicking rounding. And then let's increase the radius. And then let's also move this up a little bit. So I'm gonna go to my front view and then just move it up. Next, I'm gonna add an extrude, and then I'm gonna place our toaster spline underneath our extrude. And then let's just increase the extrude offset by selecting the extrude generator and then adjusting the offset. Okay, now let's also smoothen our edges by clicking on the caps, and then under size, let's just increase the number. So maybe around 15 is enough. Okay, and then let's also increase the segments. Okay, so we now have the body of our toaster. So let's add a few holes at the top. So to do that, I'm just going to create a couple of cubes over here. So I'm just going to go to my top view and then just resize my cubes like so. And then I'm just going to move this up. And also I'm just going to round out the edges of my cube by clicking on fillet under our attributes. And then let's just increase the radius like so. And then let's align it. And then let's also scale it lengthwise. And then let's duplicate this one. So I'm going to hold down Control or Command on my keyboard and then left click and drag. So we now have both of our toast holes aligned here. Let's put that into a null. So let's create a null and then let's place that underneath. Okay. So this will be my toast holes. So we have toast A and toast B. And then here we have our two different objects. I'm going to create a Boolean generator here. And then I'm going to place the two of them underneath that Boolean. So now we have our toaster and our toast subtracting our toaster over here. Let's also add a sort of like a knob. So if you take a look at our reference, we have a knob over here or sort of like a slider. So let's also create another cube. And then onto our top view, let's just make it thinner. Then move it to the side. And then let's move it up. And then let's use the scale icon. And then let's use the scale tool. Make sure we're in object mode. So I'm just going to resize this. And then let's put this underneath our toast holes, this cube. So now it's subtracting our toast. We can also adjust this a little bit. Okay. So the next thing I would need to do is also add a couple of holes here for our knobs, as you can see. So I'm just going to create a cylinder. And then let's rotate it. Or you in the attributes editor, you can set the orientation from Y to maybe X. And then let's move it here to our side. Let's increase the height segments, or sorry, rotation segments to maybe 50. And then also let's make our cylinder rounded, all of the edges. So let's click on caps. Let's check fillet, and then let's make our radius a little bit more smooth. And then let's intersect it with our toaster over here. And then let's also name this knob. Let's put that underneath our toast holes. So now we have our indent for our knob right here. We can duplicate this one. So I'm going to hold down Control or Command and then move it to the side. And then I can just make this a little bit smaller using the scale tool. and then move our knob to the side as well. So looking good. Okay, so I can just maybe move our slider over here and add one more knob. So I'm gonna hold down Control or Command and then move this to the side. So what we can do now is actually just copy this knob. Sorry, let's just copy this knob. So I'm just gonna copy this, Control C and then Control V. And then I'm just going to scale this down and then move it inside our toaster. And then let's also copy the other knobs. So I'm just gonna press Control C and Control V on my keyboard. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. So maybe I can just reuse this knob over here. So I can just hold down Command or Control on my keyboard and then left click and drag to move it to the next knob. Okay. So next we need to add sort of like a slider control here for our toaster. So to do that, I'm just going to add another cube like so. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. Maybe let's round out the edges. So I'm going to go to the attributes editor. I'm going to check fillet. Okay, so that looks good. And then maybe let's align it to the side of our toast. We can also move the axis by converting this into an editable mesh. So to do that, let's click on editable mesh over here. And then let's turn on axis mode and then move this to the left. And then let's turn this off. So now we have our slider for our toaster. Let's also resize this to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so for the base of our toaster, let's just create another rectangle. All right. So I'm going to go to my Create Spline tool again. And then I'm going to select Rectangle. For this rectangle, I'm just going to change the plane settings to XZ so that it's laying flat on the grid or on the ground. And then I'm going to change to my top view. And then I'm going to move it in position. And then I'm going to scale this lengthwise and then also scale this down. And then I'm going to check rounding to make our rectangle rounded. And then I'm going to go to my perspective view again. I'm going to add an extrude generator for our rectangle. So I'm going to show you a shortcut. Instead of creating an extrude and then parenting it under the rectangle or parenting the rectangle under the extrude, we can do that automatically. So if you select your rectangle and then if you hold Option or Alt and then Command or Control on your keyboard, so that's Option Command on a Mac or Alt Control on PC, and then you click your extrude, our rectangle is automatically underneath or parented into our extrude, which is the generator we just created. So now I can just move my rectangle up and maybe just adjust our extrude settings so that it'll be a little bit thinner, like so. And then we can also just move our rectangle base. So I'm just adjusting this. Okay, let's also maybe adjust the toaster rounding. Maybe let's also decrease the radius. Okay, so I'm just adjusting this so that we have a good base. Okay, I think that's okay. And then let's also round the edges of our extrusion. So I'm just going to click on the extrude and then I'm going to go to caps and then I'm going to increase the size. Also the segments. So maybe around 7 centimeters and then 5 segments. Okay, so last but not the least, let's add our logo for our retro toaster. So to do that, we can actually create a text spline over here. So let's just move that into position. So here you can actually change the text. For example, let's type in retro or any toaster brand you would like to add. And then you can just set the size here in our attributes manager. And then you can also change the font under font. So let's try to look for a unique font over here. So maybe we could use this one. I'm using Street Cred. You can download that at thefont.com. And then let's select our text. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and Command on a Mac or Alt and Control on a PC. And then I'm going to add an extrude. So there you go. Let's adjust our extrusion so that it will be thinner. And then let's also round the edges. So maybe just around 1 centimeter and around 4 segments. Okay, so now we're finished with our toaster. Now let's add shaders to our toaster. So first, I'm going to create a standard material. Let's double click our material so that we can change the settings. Under the settings, I'm going to go to reflectance and then I'm going to click add. And then I'm going to click on Beckman so that it would be added in a reflection. And then I'm going to name this toaster chrome. Okay, let's also maybe increase the roughness. So here. And then let's add that to our toaster. Okay, so let's click and drag that to our toaster boolean, as you can see here. Or you can actually just add it to your toaster extrude over here. So I'm going to show you a neat trick. So what if you just want this to be added on the center part of the toaster, similar to our reference over here. So we just want the chrome part in the center part of our toaster mesh. So if you click on the extrude settings and then under selections, we have here our polygon selections. We have S, start cap, end cap, start bevel, and end bevel. So you can see all of the text representation of here on the right. So what you would need to do, for example, you just want to add that chrome effect on this front face of our toaster. You would need to add C1 to your selection. So for example, let's click our material tag over here and then under selection, I'm going to type C1. Watch what happens. It only applies to the front face of our extrusion. If I type in C2, it only applies at the back of our extrusion. If I type in, for example, let's take a look at the references. How about let's add R1. So let's type in R1. Our chrome only shows up in our bevel caps over here. And then R2. This only shows on the back side. Okay, so what we need to do is create another chrome material. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Control C, Control V. And then let's double click this material. And then I'm going to name this toaster front. And then under color, I'm just going to add maybe a green effect. And then let's go back to our reflectance. And then let's go to our layer color. Under texture, let's add a Fresnel. So as you can see here, we have our reflection, but we retain the green color that we added here. And then once that is set, click and drag that to your extrude generator again. But this time, since it applies to all of our toaster, let's select our material tag and then go to our attributes manager, go to selection, and then type in C1 so that it only applies to the front of our toaster. And then let's click and drag another material to our extrude and then select this one again, type in C2 here. And then later on, you can also add another color over here. So maybe I'm just going to add another color for our toaster. So I'm going to copy and paste this. And then I'm going to open the material. Let's add toaster chrome black. So basically, I will just make the reflection strength or adjust the reflection strength so that it will be black. And then let's click and drag this to our extrude. So now our toaster is black, but we just want to apply that to the bevel of our toaster. Let's click on that and then let's type in R1. So now it's only applied here. Let's add another tag in our extrude and then let's type in R2 in our selection. And then also we can just adjust the caps a little bit to make it thinner. Okay. So next we can also add colors to our holes over here. So I'm just going to maybe create a new material, but this time I will not add a reflection, and then I'm just going to set it to black. Let's name this black. And then let's click and drag it to our toaster holes so that all of our holes will be color black. And then I'm just gonna add our chrome material to our knobs and then also to our base of our toaster. And then let's have a quick render. So it's quite dark. So let's try to light this sort of like a studio setup. Oh, I also forgot to add material to our retro text. So let's add that in. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is add an HDRI image to our environment. So if you type in HDRI to Google, you can have several options. Okay, so I would prefer to use like a studio option over here. And then let's save that into our computer and then let's import it in our Cinema 4D file. Okay, so now we're back in Cinema 4D. So first, I'm going to add a sky environment for our scene. First, let's just parent all of our objects into one null. So I'm just selecting everything. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and Command or Alt and Control on my keyboard. And then I'm going to create a null so that all of our objects are automatically parented under our null. Let's name this toaster. And then let's hide all of our objects. For our sky, let's create a new material. And then let's open this. Under our material, let's uncheck reflectance. And then let's name this environment. And then I'm going to import our HDRI image. So I'm going to click on color. Let's click on texture. And then let's import our HDRI image. Let's click open. And then let's click no. Then let's close this. And click and drag it to our sky. Okay, so now we can see the reflection of our sky environment to our toaster. Let's just click on the render settings. And then let's turn on under effect our ambient occlusion. And then also let's add in global illumination. So now let's have a quick render. Toaster is looking good. It's just a little bit dark. Okay, so let's fix that by adding lights. So let's add a light over here and then let's move it up like so. We can also add a floor for our toaster. So let's just add a floor here. And then let's render again. All right, so let's also position the camera properly. And then let's render this again. So if you want to hide your sky environment, you can add a compositing tag. So let's right click the sky and then go to rendering. Let's go to render tags and then let's add compositing. So let's click our compositing tag over here and then under tag, let's uncheck scene by camera. So now even though we cannot see our environment, it's still reflecting to our toaster. So let's render this one more time. And there you go. That's how you create a toaster product visualization using just the spline commands or generators. Okay, so maybe you can tweak the settings a little bit to personalize your render. So if you want to save your image, you click this render to picture viewer icon. And then once it is rendered, go to File, and then save your image. So thank you for watching this tutorial, and I look forward in seeing you in the next video. Goodbye!